Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. We have a fantastic group of speakers that we'll introduce to you shortly. Today, we're going to discuss success stories of Lean Six Sigma custom training and how our partners have been able to elevate their organizations to new heights of operational excellence. I'm Angela Miller with UC San Diego's Division of Extended Studies, and I oversee the Process Improvement or Lean Six Sigma certificate programs. I'd like to introduce you to our moderator, Jim Athen. Jim is a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt and the president of the Athen Group. Jim is also the lead instructor of our Lean Six Sigma Green and Black Belt certificate program. Jim, I'll kick it over to you.
Thanks, Angela. My name is Jim Athen. I've been involved in Lean Six Sigma since actually 95. I got trained. I've been now working with organizations to teach, to coach, and to train on Lean Six Sigma principles and methodologies and the actual application and success of that as it applies to their individual business. Some quick things. Lean Six Sigma is about process improvement. And when we look at processes, we recognize that sometimes we're stuck working in a process that's not very efficient or effective. We realize it needs improvement. So we apply both of these tool sets. The Lean tool set, which is really about addressing cycle time. The Six Sigma tool set, which is really looking at defects in a process. Combined, we take the tools and put them underneath the umbrella of DMAIC, the problem-solving methodology. We have both open enrollment training at the college where people from different organizations will join a class. They will go through the tools. They'll work their own project. But we also have customized training where we apply these tools and we apply the training and we customize it specifically for an organization. We have two examples of that, two speakers who are going to share with us their experiences, both Ashley Gambier and Finiendra Samraj. I'd like to introduce Ashley Gambier. She's with UCSD Health. And Ashley, please tell us a bit about yourself, your current role, and your experience implementing Lean Six Sigma training.
Hi, everyone. Well, my name is Ashley Gambier, and I'm the Executive Director for Transformation at UC San Diego Health. And our mission for transformation is that we develop 10,000 problem solvers that relentlessly improve the value of care for our patients while loving their jobs. And the big driver for this was we realized that in order to achieve our institutional strategic priorities, we needed to not only deliver the highest quality of care, but we needed to reduce the burden of work so that we could really focus on our patients and have a sustainable operating model.
Excellent. Thank you, Ashley. Finiendra, you've got a similar experience, but you're actually in the public sphere. Tell us a bit about yourself, your current role, and your experience implementing Lean Six Sigma training.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. I am also a Lean Six Sigma instructor at UCSD, and this is my second year with UCSD, so I'm glad to be here. I'm a Master Black Belt in Lean Six Sigma. I own the Lean Six Sigma program at Dexcom. I'm part of the Business Transformation and Operational Excellence team at Dexcom, and Dexcom is in the market for almost 2 decades, producing the continuous glucose monitoring for diabetic type 1, type 2 patients. And we are embarking new challenges in the marketplace, and Lean Six Sigma is helping us grow and be prepared for that market. So glad to be here. I have experience in the manufacturing sector, IT, and fintech. So I've used Lean Six Sigma quite a bit, and glad to be here.
Excellent. Thank you, Finiendra. You heard a couple of key phrases there. One, you heard this idea of an army of problem solvers. We're trying to equip the entire organization to address and resolve shortcomings in our process. You also heard this idea of transformational excellence. How do we take an organization and transform it into a superior, world-class, high-performance organization? So a couple of things we want to look at. One, I'd like to ask Finiendra, what were some of the key driving factors that led your organization to consider customized Lean Six Sigma training as opposed to, say, open enrollment?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, the customer, we've been in the market for almost 2 decades, and the customer expectations are growing high, and they want, better products, faster at a cheaper cost. And those are the perfect variables that most of the companies see as benefits by using Lean Six Sigma and developing the problem solvers. And using a customized material, a customized program really brings the same community of employees who work in various teams within Dexcom really come and collaborate in a very a coached environment. And that's where I think the customized material really helped us. And also, I think customization, if you think about it, it's really mostly having your peers from different areas really come together and share the best practices, and also use the Lean Six Sigma platform as a base to grow on it. So I think partnering with UCSD, we are just in the middle of our first cohort in the Lean Practitioner program, and we're doing great. We have around 13 projects in the pipeline. There's more coming as we go and partner and do more cohorts with the Lean Practitioner training. So yeah.
Interesting. Thank you, Fernandra. When we talk about customized Lean Six Sigma training, that means a couple of things. One, it's the same organization. So all the people in the training are from that same organization. They can share, as he said, their best practices, their learnings, and they can also bounce ideas off and benchmark each other to make improvements. And so it's interesting, Ashley, you come from within UCSD, but you're on a different part. You're not on the continuing education side. You're actually in healthcare. So tell us what led from your perspective to UCSD Health to want to implement customized Lean Six Sigma training, and what were some of the driving factors?
Yes, I'm happy to share that. So I used to work on the campus, the academic side of UC San Diego, and we actually offer scholarships to UCSD Extension's public courses because we so want to support and encourage people to develop these skills. But when I started working with health, I think there was a lot of concern culturally that our patients aren't like cars going down manufacturing lines, and this kind of feeling that healthcare is different. And I think that to anyone that has a background in this, all the concepts apply to services, maybe slightly differently, but for the most part, it completely applies. But I think to overcome some of that perception barrier that we had, it was really important for us to have a lot of healthcare examples, a lot of integration into the storytelling part of the education. The other thing that we really wanted was to have the students, our employees, walk away with a very clear picture of how they would start applying this in their day-to-day practice. And so for us, it was really important to have our custom version of our huddling visual management boards and those sorts of things, so that our team members would recognize, oh, I'm looking at this here, and this is the theory that is supporting the why behind what we're doing. And so that, I think, was the biggest driver.
Good. Yeah. Every organization has unique challenges. And as you mentioned, Lean really comes out of the automotive industry. It's the idea of the continuous conveyor moving through through the plant, and people are standing there putting different parts on. And oftentimes we look at it and say, that's not really applicable to us. But in reality, it's about the process. It's about process improvement. So actually, I'd like to follow on with that and ask you, when you started looking in healthcare specifically, what challenges or areas of improvement that made you decide on customized Lean Six Sigma training? So you talked about the unique nature of dealing with patients and the human element, but what are some of the other challenges you saw that were unique to healthcare?
Well, I really think it's that human service provider aspect. And so, if you use a pin factory model, that doesn't, paper clips don't have a fear of needles. There's a lot of things that can derail flow. I also think that there's a large amount of variation in terms of what Sigma level you want to design for in healthcare. Mm-hmm. And so, if it's something that's truly life and death, has to be perfect, we're really going to be pushing for that perfection. But a lot of services, we're not necessarily designing for that. And I think that one of the biggest drivers in healthcare that's unique is most of the people in healthcare don't work at a computer all day. And if they do, it's charting, it's messaging, it's not necessarily analysis. Right. So one of the big customizations that we did to kind of match where our team members, how are they able to apply this? How naturally can they integrate this into their work? Is we focused more on Lean than Six Sigma, and in our white, yellow, and green belt levels.
Very interesting. We find that some organizations are much heavier on the Lean side. How do we reduce the cycle time? How do we get rid of the waste, the things that get in the way of us delivering excellent care in this example as quickly as we can, as opposed to getting caught up in all the wrong things. But sometimes when you move into life sciences or you move into some of the harder sciences that they're harder in a certain way and not hard, I mean hard as in mathematics, they often migrate towards Six Sigma. And I'd like to get the insight from Phinendra. One, what were the driving factors that led you to consider customized training? And then following on with that, I'm curious what challenges you saw that made you want to use customized training as opposed to open enrollment?
Yeah, I think, a lot of the companies like ours, we have a lot of strategies looking forward. And as we take our teams to change their mindset, they still have to do their day-to-day job. And one of the main importance of a customized training or even using a partner outside of Dexcom is really get some faster wins in the short term while we also transform the wheels internally. And I think that we can do when we externalize some of the training aspects of it, but also but give them the more support system for their projects so they can really apply them on the project. So we invested our value add time more on the coaching side, the mentoring side, the project management side, the budgeting side, the resource capacity allocation side. And then we took these one aspects and give it to the best in class UCSD team so they can actually work with us and we support them as we go. So I think the biggest challenge is how do we get those faster wins while we also do our daily job and also focus on a long-term strategy. And I think that's where the puzzle is being solved from this partnership.
Excellent. What I heard both of you say was, how do we take this diverse set of tools and make it applicable to the people who work in the processes, regardless of what they're doing, whether they're manufacturing very intricate equipment, whether they're working warehouses, whether they're providing some sort of, technical support via over the phone, or whether they're providing healthcare. All of this requires that people understand what tools are relevant to them in their particular work environment. And so, Phinendra, I would like to follow on. When you began to consider Lean Six Sigma training, you had a variety of providers. There's a myriad out in the marketplace, and you chose UCSD. So can you tell me, when you started looking at choosing a partner and developing your customized program, what criteria did you use to make those decisions?
Absolutely. One is being local. Dexcom's headquartered in San Diego and probably like around 2 miles away from where the UCSD is, and just one exit away. So it was a very it's very local. It's right there, and if we were to really go on site or remote, we had that flexibility. And also we're partnered with another university in Mesa because we have another facility there. But I think me being the UCSD instructor, and I joined Dexcom just last year, I think paved the way to strengthen that partnership even further because I've been a green belt instructor. And I think there's a backstory to my journey because in 2013, I got my green belt from Tracy O'Rourke, and she's one of the black belt, green belt instructor at UCSD. So UCSD has been part of my life for a long time. And when I joined Dexcom, and I knew that UCSD was also partnered at certain aspects, we just went back, strengthened those bridges, and Angela being a fantastic facilitator, we just partnered, and there's no looking back from here. So I think being local, having a kind of background in the UCSD and being a UCSD instructor myself, seeing what you do, really strengthened us to take that call and say, what, we're going to give you more programs and partner with you more because now we're building a family where we have that flexibility, there's a trust factor to it, and also looking forward for a long-term relationship here. So yeah.
Interesting. You mentioned us being local, UCSD being local relative to Dexcom. There's an old saying that a prophet has no honor in his hometown, right? And that oftentimes people don't want to use a local provider because they're looking, it's like, we know these guys, they work, and so actually, from a certain perspective, you're a captive audience, and yet you had the ability to choose whoever you wanted to. I don't know if you could provide maybe just a little insight other than we had to go with, you had a choice. Why did you choose UCSD?
We absolutely had a choice. And to us, the choice was a no-brainer. And I think, our proximity and alignment with UCSD Extension gave us exposure to the team, to the instructors, to Angela. And So we had high confidence in the team from partnering on other things institutionally. But honestly, I can't think of anything that would be better, truly. I have hired people who have come trained from other places, and there's a high variation in the quality of that training. And I think that UCSD Extension is the right balance of rigorous and accessible. And in particular, the custom training, you feel like you're on the same team. They really want, whoever you're providing this training to benefit from it. The flexibility, the thought partnership, it really is, the only word I can think of is truly a partnership, and in the most ideal sense. Good communication, good listening, truly understanding the needs, providing different alternatives to try and address, whatever the constraints are. And so I wouldn't want to go anywhere else for this.
Well, that's great to hear.
And Jim, actually, sorry to interrupt, but I
Please.
think that was also one of the criteria that we were blown away with is that UCSD really looks inwards and applies their own learning, programs to their employees. And I don't remember the number, but I remember in one of our first meetings where Angela and Shannon actually showed us some numbers in terms of how many have you certified from UCSD before we go and expose our programs to the rest of the world. So I think that actually speaks to itself how much you can actually benefit from programs at UCSD in your real world scenarios.
One thing's about the way the program is structured at UCSD is, just like both of you mentioned, trying to make the training relevant to the people who have to execute it in their own work environment, right? How do I make these tools and make them real to us? UCSD strives to do that not only for the student, but for the organization as well. And sometimes there's literally certain subjects you say, you know what, we're just not going to include that in the training because it's not really relevant in this environment. And other times we take the exact same subject for a different client and we wind up having to really extrapolate and accentuate that and spend a lot more time in some different areas. So it really depends on the needs of the partner that we're working with. I'm interested, Fernando, when you were looking at different organizations that you could choose from, did you have any specific metrics or KPIs that you use to try to measure the real world impact of customized training versus, say, open enrollment, and even to choose which partner you went with?
Yeah, I think the real metric was within Dexcom, how we can transform our own people using a program from UCSD. And by the way, so before we started with the Lean Practitioner program at UCSD, we have our own internal Green Belt certification training program, and I'm one of the instructors. And our program actually meets your requirements, the UCSD requirements, meaning we actually are now kind of getting all the credits that a UCSD equal agreement program can give to our employees. So that in itself, from the beginning, we knew that was the right thing to do, is to create a world-class program. Even though it is internal to us, we wanted to really partner with somebody where we can say, hey, these credits are actually worth being transferred to any other master's programs or what have you for the career growth of individual employees, because wherever they go, they take this as a growth as a growth variable with them. So I think our metrics, our KPIs, is really how do we let everybody grow together. And I think we have seen almost 60 plus projects in the pipeline, and moving forward, we are seeing a lot more projects being added, and the benefits that come from it. That's a real, that speaks to go back and invest in this area so that the ROIs are really repeated as we go. So it's actually, it's speaking by itself, really, when we set up a program like this for our employees.
So what I'm hearing you say is, one, partnering with UCSD gives certain advantages in terms of consistency, uniformity, and reputation within the marketplace, but also that you're helping individuals create a set of skills that not only contribute to the success of the organization, but contribute to their personal success. And I love the way you said it, Ashley, trying to grow an entire organization of problem solvers, so that instead of just looking at a problem and shrugging, they actually roll up their sleeves and go in and start addressing those issues. Very, very interesting. Actually, I'm very interested, as you go and encounter and try to put together a program and you try to administer a program, there's all sorts of challenges that you face, all sorts of issues that come up. Can you share with us one or two of the challenges that you were encountered and how you resolved that, or how the program and how the assistance of the program was made to help you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd say one of the early problems we encountered was limited bandwidth of our team of black belts. And so initially, our team developed the training and was delivering it. But we also were trying to roll out a daily management system. We were leading process improvement workshops and Kaizen and providing coaching. And, with a small team, we realized that not only the training content development and instruction was taking a lot of time, but also kind of the student affairs support and the enrollment, and I want to switch from this class to that one and be waitlisted. And there was a lot of overhead. We realized the training program, delivering it internally, was taking over 70% of our bandwidth, which really limited our ability to do some of the culture development. That is what we were really missioned to do. And so, the solution to that problem truly was this partnership with UCSD Extension. Let's let the experts do what they do best, and leverage the custom training that we had started developing, but partnering with them to make it even better. And so that was probably one of the first challenges that we had and were able to overcome, and really thinking about the value of that investment in the custom training and what we were trying to achieve as an organization, because I think training is a huge part of it, of what we're trying to do, but it's not everything. And so we really wanted to spend our time on the things that were going to move the organization forward, and then partner with Extension to deliver the training. And that's been wonderful. I don't think we'd ever go back.
So I'm interested in both examples, Fernanda and Ashley. I'm going a little off script, I know, but I'm curious how you mentioned limited bandwidth. That makes sense from your perspective. But then the students go through and they, of course, are limiting. They have limited bandwidth too. They have jobs they have to do. They have other things. And now they're expected to go to the training. But tell me about how they manage that and how they helped with the program to manage the bandwidth individuals. And I'm curious what you discovered about them working their own projects as part of the training. So it's more than just training. It's more than just getting lectured at. It's actually putting that into practice with their own project. Would either of you like to comment on that? Maybe Fernanda, start us off. Just about projects and bandwidth. Yeah,
absolutely. I think, again, post-COVID, we know that I think most of the companies have accepted that remote is option, or is the only way sometimes to get more efficient at really doing multiple things at the same time, per se, like a training program on the side and then your daily job, but also a kind of commit to it fully, so that when you're doing one, you're completely focused. And I think the UCSD program, what I have seen just working with the recent instructor, just with the first cohort, is that the program is so contemporary. Because, for example, the instructor was well versed with the kind of a Lucid tool or a Mural tool, where it really facilitates the online collaboration of the students of a cohort. And that actually helped a lot, because one of the challenges that we had is, of course, people wanting to have a more kind of a remote setup. There is some population who still want to go and do an on-site, but I think we provided to be remote, at least for the first few cohorts here. So having a remote option. Another one is how can we have the data from Dexcom just inside of inside of Dexcom, so that it doesn't really go back and forth in terms of the outside world versus anything that is very sensitive, for example, right? And because we are again a FDA approved a compliant site, manufacturing med devices products, so there's a lot of data integrity issues. But having a tool like Lucid, for example, what we saw is that the program was flexible enough to have an outside instructor come into our world and teach what we have within our walls, and then go back to his work. So it actually helped us have that very contemporary approach, high collaboration, highly remote, but also have that data just stay in the premises so that, there's really a little bit of more secured feeling, I guess. But of course, we did sign a lot of NDAs and that partnering with UCSD, but just I think it gives a feeling of security that it's our environment, and somebody else is really be able to come and go very easily with the tools and the exposure that we have. So
yeah, it's a great feature. That's a great point, that it does take care of sensitive information within the organization. I know working with healthcare, sometimes there's concern about HIPAA regulations and that sort of thing, which are slightly different than NDA, but equally, if not more important. And so we, work to make sure that that is safeguarded, especially if it's within the organization. It makes it a lot easier. Ashley, I'm curious about bandwidth of individuals that were taking the training. How did they balance the training? I mean, you go to 2 weeks of training straight, you're out of the organization for 2 weeks. I don't think that's the model you followed. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, that is not the model we followed. So and as I mentioned before, for us, it's so much more than the training. This is a culture shift. And so we needed to have a culture change where we, if we're going to have the 10,000 problem solvers, that means that everyone's job is to run the business or do their job and improve the business. And that in itself is a big culture shift. So how do we make the space for improvement? Because it's the only way to get out of what we jokingly call the sea of frustration to the sands of satisfaction, right? If you're going to get through that, you actually have to eliminate the waste so that you can spend the time on improvement. And I think that's the real business case for attending the training and doing a project. Is when we align those project goals to the organizational goals. Yeah. And if, when people sign up to take the class, we have their supervisors sign off and say, I support this person spending their time. I will allow them to make improvements in this area. And we make sure that there's that support and that agreement. We also try to celebrate and reward, because sometimes it is extra effort. Sometimes it definitely does feel like more work to make the improvement, at least at first, especially when you're in class, because that is time just in class, not producing your project work necessarily. Right. And but we really value professional development. Everyone at UCSD has 80 hours of education time per year, and so we really try to tie this professional development opportunity into the performance appraisals. We do monthly report outs of improvement work where people can have 5 minutes in front of a very large audience in the organization, sharing their work. Other people get inspired by it, pick up a best practice, or then think about, oh, maybe I should go do my Greenbelt project and leverage some of what was learned from this person. And so we really try and create this culture where this is an appropriate way to spend your time.
We talk about a culture is the way we do things, right? And Dr. Duran in the 1960s said, you can't change a culture by training, right? Training is sheep dip, if you will. You dip sheep in the sheep dip to try to get rid of the fleas. And as soon as they get in the field, they're getting repopulated with fleas before you're finished with the last one. But rather, culture is the way we do things. And if you want to change a culture, you fundamentally have to change the way you do things. And so I think in both instances, and in fact, this is what we find with all of our partners, individuals are working their projects in their own area. So they're taking the tools they're learning and they're working those projects specifically on work that they're familiar with, and they're able to address some of the frustrating things that they dealt with in their environment. Just curious, could you give us maybe an example, maybe one each, of just a particular project that stands out in your mind where you saw someone successful and you said, wow, that was really amazing what they were able to accomplish during the course of that customized training? Would you care to share one, Finiendra?
Yeah, again, we're just doing our first cohort with lead practitioners. So there's some projects in place, still work in progress, but some of the projects, again, we are like the half manufacturing and a half IT, and we have had a good balance of those projects come in. One of the examples would be like just apply the SMED tool for a changeover. For example, there was a tray with around like 40 or 50 cavities for a sensor to kind of move from one cell to another, and we were only using like 50% of that capacity. And suddenly with this project, very quickly we were able to devise and say, you know what, why can't we do 100% capacity? And boom, there was a high, output throughput coming per hour just because of that little change and little focused project that became a, Greenbelt project, and we were able to use it in a live environment, and not just on one line, but you can actually replicate that same learning into different production lines or even different plants and build that, and get more benefits from the same work or the same analysis of somebody taking up as a Greenbelt project. Again, we have tons of those examples, but I think every project is unique. And like you said, I think I love that Juran's quote where, training is not the only thing that is going to transform a culture, but you have to really build and transform and change how we do things. And that comes as we churn those wheels more and more. And that's where, like Ashley's point really comes together, where when we have a lot more problem solvers, now everybody's thinking the same. And while we make people better problem identifier, problem analysts, we actually hit the nail where we have the same people preventing the problems as we go. So that actually builds the culture, that actually changes the mindset and transform an organization. And that's where we want to be. And I think one project at a time. And I think we're doing a great job partnering with UCSD on this journey. So
yeah, it's interesting you mentioned SMED, single minute exchange of dies. It's all about quick changeover equipment. If you read all the textbooks and you look, it's all heavy machining and big examples of injection molding machines and all. But you know what? When we introduce those ideas, we get people to ask why. Right. For whatever reason, when we get to a certain age, we quit asking why. We're not curious anymore. And I think one of the major outcomes and one of the beauties of doing it internally is if you can get people to start asking why are we not filling up the entire tray? Why are we delivering the service this way? Why is it only one at a time? Why don't we do 5 at one? I mean, why do we do the things the way we do? Actually, I'm curious if you have an example of where we just asked why. Why are we doing that? And it was revelation. It's not really the answers, it's the questions. We're trying to get better questions. Can you give us an example of something like that?
Yeah, there's so many exampple,s and I love it because this is, I think, the culture shift that is happening is asking why, and the psychological safety to do that, but that's not going to be something you need to be scared to do. An example, we had a black belt project that was getting beds turned over in our hospitals faster. So when a patient discharges, how quickly can we get a new patient into that space? Because it's really important that we get those beds being used. And in healthcare, there's so much integration with technology into the processes. And so one of the things that would happen in kind of the prior current state is patient would be discharged. Someone had to go in and click a button to signal an andon that environmental services need to come clean the room. And then they would come clean the room, and then the new patient could come in. And we realized in observation that there was a big delay between when the patient was discharged and when someone remembered to signal that it was time to come. And so leveraging some technology to mistake-proof this, the second that the discharge was coded in the system, it automatically sent that signal. It no longer required a person. The question of why does someone need to signal that? We actually don't. It became a monument in our process. And just having that be, the next step, because the poll was there, we're ready for you, come clean this room. And it saved so much time and allowed us to utilize our space so much better and get patients their care faster.
One of the other benefits is exactly what you said, Ashley. We begin to use the same language to describe situations, and we have common terms like go to Gemba or andon, which is just a signal to tell you to do something. Or other phrases, you use the word monument, right? And we often say monuments are things that we do that we all get accustomed to and nobody asks why. It's like, why is the rug always tripping me? Don't worry about it. It's just an old rug. And it's like, instead of saying, what can I do to prevent that? We just trip over it regularly, right? Same sort of thing we have like that. Why do we have to go click another button? Why can't it just be out of it? But it's the why, we're getting short on time. So I'm going to ask a closing question to each of you. Ashley, if you could offer one piece of advice to an organization considering customized Lean Six Sigma training, what would it be? What would you tell them?
I think my advice would be to not worry about overly customizing it. These core Lean principles and Six Sigma principles are wonderful and they apply everywhere. I think really focus on the 20% that will make it particularly meaningful and useful to your organization.
What would you say that means? Make sure you have examples that are not just diverse examples, but also examples specific to our industry, our situation, our organization.
I think if that's important to your organization, yes. But you know, some groups I know actually really enjoy hearing those examples from other industries because they learn a lot, and you know, there's a place for that. So I'm having trouble answering that question exactly because we're talking about custom training, which means every person's going to want something different out of this. If you could think about it from that critical to quality versus nice to have, and really focus the customization on that critical to quality where there might be gaps in an open enrollment set of content or format. You know, we have to be very flexible with schedules. We have people that don't just work 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. We have to consider timing of the offerings, virtual versus in person. You know, certain things that we want people to come back to their work environment and start practicing. We want it to look the same. We want it to be very familiar so they can very quickly say, oh, I saw that in class. Now I know what this is, and connect those dots. So I think it's just being very clear around what needs to be customized, because the core principles are wonderful and they really apply everywhere. And I think you can over-engineer the custom part and it can really delay you being out there and starting to get this information.
At some point, it comes full circle back to where you started. You're like, maybe we should have left alone. But you bring up an interesting point. The customization is not just the material and the examples. It's also the flexibility to deliver at a pace and in a manner that's consistent with what the organization needs. So that's a great insight. Phenandra, in closing, if you had to give a piece of advice to organizations considering customized Lean Six Sigma training, what would it be?
I think for me, the one-to-one partnership with the instructor is actually a big plus, because if they can understand what we make, what kind of products that we make, what does actually, you know, our organization looks like, and what kind of projects do we have, and give them the training before they go and actually instruct us, they are already working with our mindset in their head. And when they're instructing, automatically they can actually switch gears between the outside world and also what we do within the enterprise. So I think the partnership with the instructor to develop that training and really working with them, having that communication, a high set of communication from the beginning is going to help a lot. And I think it's the customization, like I think Ashley said, you know, you don't have to over-engineer it because it's garbage in, garbage out. And no matter what, even if it's a pizza making process or delivering an airplane, end of the day, it's a process that converts a set of inputs into a set of outputs. And if you actually understand how Lean Six Sigma works in some of these projects, if you speak the language of the enterprise and if the instructor is actually already kind of empowered in that area, I think there'll be a lot more output that is more customized automatically, because there's a little bit of understanding in terms of where he's coming from when he's doing instructions, or also giving assignments or even coaching for projects.
So having customization, not only in materials, not only in the method of delivery, but also having an instructor, an outside instructor who's familiar with your business and can use examples that are relevant to your business, and then help people understand what are the appropriate tools, what are the right questions, what's the right direction to go, so that people don't spin their wheels on tools that aren't going to help them pragmatically towards the goal that they're reaching. I love the idea of the common language and of the common examples that we're going to use. So thank you very much, Ashley, for your time. Phenandra, thank you for your insight and your help. We're at the close now. Angela, any closing thoughts before we go?
No, thank you, Jim. Thank you,
Thank you.
Phenandra and Ashley. Thank you so much.